And also, Joan really does not like kissing these guys. So let me know below in the comments. Do you think this is like a generational thing? Like she wants to be like more demure on camera, or do you think it's more so because she's not into them? Because it could be she doesn't want to like seem like a floozy on camera. Hi everyone, my name is Demetri and welcome back to DemetriTube, The Bachelorette, Golden Edition. Let's talk about it. As always, if you're enjoying my videos, please go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. I'm a growing YouTuber and the likes and subscribes really help me out. So the episode starts out with a group date with Kaitlyn Bristowe, and for the group date, all the contestants create a striptease routine and perform in front of a live audience. And this date was a hot mess. Like, honestly, the producers probably all should be fired for doing this as a date. This is just me. I really don't think we needed a live audience. We really didn't need a live audience. And also, I would have preferred, like, couldn't they have just learned like the tango or something and danced one-on-one with Joan or something? I would have much preferred that over to see like a bunch of old men try to do a striptease. And I don't know if y'all caught this, but before the group date started, Mark was like, I'm definitely not doing that. And then they found out that they're raising money for a cancer charity. And then once they found that out, Mark was like, wait, it's for cancer? Never mind, I'll get on stage. And Mark's wife passed away from cancer. So there was a voiceover with some photos of him with his wife and explaining like how she died and all that. So this cause means more to him. But at the same time, it was just kind of funny because Mark initially, it felt like, oh, I'm not going to do that because I have morals or it's too embarrassing. But the moment he found out it was charity, he's like, oh wait, never mind. Like morals just out the window. And during the striptease dance performance, they were playing Lady Gaga's Love Game. And I love that song. I think that's like one of her best songs. And it definitely made it more fun. And during the group date, honestly, I thought all of the guys looked a mess. There were only two standouts, Jonathan and Keith. Everyone kept asking Jonathan if he had done this before, and when they were in the confessional, one of the producers accused him of having done this before either. But y'all, like, I'm pretty sure Jonathan had never done this before. He just has a nice body and he has rhythm. So he swept all of the contestants under the rug. Like, it didn't take much. Most of these contestants have no rhythm, and the editors and production were definitely putting in overtime to make this look somewhat on beat. And then Keith, he did this move where he like dropped down to the floor and then went up on Joan. Like, so I like that because Keith just really went for it. Like, I just like how, oh, I may not have rhythm, I may not have the best body, but I'm gonna try to get your attention and go for it. And I just really appreciated that. And honestly, after this group date, it truly looked like Joan got the ick from every single person except Keith. After that, we move on to the night portion and Joan serves us a really cute pink dress. Next, if you made it this far in the video, please go ahead and pound that like button for the YouTube algorithm. And Joan has a few one-on-ones that I want to talk about, and the first one is with Chock. During the one-on-one, Joan says she wants to see more of Chock, and she says she sees a future. And like, Joan is saying this, but I'm not really seeing it, if that makes sense. Like, she's saying it, but I'm just not seeing the connection. Next, she has a one-on-one with Keith, and he admits that when he was 20 years old, he wanted to be a Chippendales dancer, and y'all, like, that's a red flag. But honestly, in Keith's defense, he's just so much fun that I would let that go. Like, he's just a little weird, and that's fine. And lastly, we have a one-on-one with Mark, and Mark tells Joan that his wife encouraged him to go out and get remarried. And this seems to be a common theme amongst these widowers. So I totally understand the guilt behind it. Like, Joan and Mark both feel guilty going back out there and dating because when it comes to your partner, there's also that like loyalty factor. But at the same time, I love how selfless Joan's husband and Mark's wife both were, because on their deathbeds, they know that their partners are still fairly young and there's a chance they're gonna live a long time and possibly without a partner. And I think another factor is they understand how amazing their partner is, and they know their partner likely has a lot of time left, so share how amazing you are with someone else. And I think that selflessness does play a factor into it. After that, something else happens with Chock, but I'm gonna save that till the end and talk about it all at once. Next, we have a one-on-one date with Jordan, and before the one-on-one date with Jordan, Joan finds out some tragic news regarding Chock, and she almost was not able to go on the date. And when she said that, in my head, I was like, Joan, you need to go on this date. Like, you do not have a lot of time. We truly cannot be skipping dates. So for the date, Joan and Jordan go ice skating, and I was terrified watching this date because Jordan doesn't know how to ice skate, and at one point he fell so hard, and I'm like, yo, this man is gonna break an arm. And this date was so cute. I absolutely love this, but I wish Joan took someone who actually knew how to ice skate, because they had fun and made the best of it, but it would have been a much better date if they went with someone who knew how to ice skate. And like, I know how to ice skate. I haven't done it in a while, but I do know how to do it. And like, the one problem with this date is like, it was like a winter wonderland scene. It wasn't like a normal ice rink. So in a normal ice rink, there are guardrails all around the side. So if you don't know how to ice skate, you're just gonna be married to the rail the entire time. But this was more dangerous because there are no guardrails. It's just like a winter wonderland scene. So he's more likely gonna fall. But overall, Jordan was a really good sport about all of this, and it looked like a pretty good date. And they also get a live private concert with REO Speedwagon, which y'all know I love the private concerts. I wish we haven't been having a lot of them, but I love them. Like, please do this more. So Joan and Jordan sit down and have a one-on-one, and Jordan explains that he married his ex-wife in college, and then years later there were breaches in marital trust, so they ended up getting a divorce. But I think they divorced after their kids were like 18 or just like adults or something. He didn't want to mess up the kids by getting a divorce. And at one point he also says he moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with his kids in Wicker Park. And I wasn't really sure what that means. So I'm just not that familiar with Chicago, and I live in DC, and honestly, unless you move to New York, you could get more space wherever you go. So I'm a little jaded about this, but I'm assuming he had to move into an apartment smaller than he wanted with like 3 kids. And I finally figured out Jordan. So this is not a read. So Jordan is just kind of a bro-y Chicago guy. So I haven't spent too much time in Chicago, but overall I've heard the guys there tend to be very bro-y and kind of fratty. And I hate to say it, but that's very much Jordan. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that's a bad thing. And also Jordan is a very attractive man, but just know kind of what you're getting into. Like, he's the type of guy where they're gonna go to Cubs games, they're gonna get on the boat, they're gonna like go to the bars, drink some beers, have pizza. Like, that's like, if that's the kind of life you want, I'm pretty sure like that's the kind of life you would get with him. And Jordan seems like a very active guy, but you're gonna get like a classic Chicago active, if that makes sense. Like, y'all are probably gonna go to sports games, hit the bars, vacation once or twice a year, like that type of thing. If you want that life, then he's perfect. But if you want to do more museums, or you want someone who's like more emotional, more emotionally in tune, or you want to do more out of the box type of things, like, I don't think he's going to be your best pick. Like, I think a life with him is going to be very classic. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Just know that's likely with him, that's what you're going to get. And again, I don't know if I'm explaining this the best, but just to compare, like, if she were to choose Keith or Chock, they would be more adventurous and do more out of the box things than I think Jordan would. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's just more of like, what lifestyle do you want? And then when it comes to Jordan and Joan's connection, again, I'm not seeing a big connection. Like, I'm starting to think Joan may not like most of these guys. And also, Joan really does not like kissing these guys. So let me know below in the comments. Do you think this is like a generational thing? Like, she wants to be like more demure on camera, or do you think it's more so because she's not into them? Because it could be she doesn't want to like seem like a floozy on camera, so she's trying to minimize the kissing on camera, which again, she comes from a different generation, so like that's very understandable. After that, we get a one-on-one with Guy, and for the date, they make dinner and sit down and have a dinner together. And it becomes very clear early on that Guy does not know how to cook. And like I said on a previous episode, most of these guys probably don't know how to cook, but Pascal was the only one that was vocal about it. And I hate to break it to y'all, a lot of people think the world is changing, and I guess it is a little bit, but like, I'm a millennial, and most millennial guys don't know how to cook either. So let me know below in the comments if you disagree, but I truly feel like it's more rare to find a guy that can like truly cook. And I'm not talking about like basic meals, can put together like a more complex meal. I feel like that's more rare to find. So during the one-on-one, Guy explains to Joan that his youngest son left home because he was an adult or whatever, and he became an empty nester and realized him and his ex-wife didn't have open communication. And he says, I wasn't happy. So him and his wife end up getting a divorce, and he just felt so much more happy. And getting a divorce from his wife, it gave him like a new lease on life, basically. Like, I don't want to say he felt better, but basically, I forgot how he explained it, but it basically gave him a new lease on life. So just a couple things I want to say about Guy and Joan. I absolutely love this one-on-one. This is like an amazing day. I would love, that's like honestly one of my favorite dates, is just like, let's just make dinner together. And like for me, it doesn't even have to be complicated. Like we could make something simple and just relax, play some music. That's like an ideal date for me, but it's like tough to find someone who actually wants to do that. And overall, like out of most of the contestants, Joan and Guy feel like a couple. Like they're just more fun. It's less tense and it just feels more effortless. And that's what I really like about her and Guy. Next, Guy explains that one of the reasons he got divorced was because he just wasn't happy. And I do want to dive into this a little bit. And Jonathan too. Jonathan's wife went up to him one day and she was just like, I'm not happy. And happiness is just a very interesting concept. I don't know if this is like specifically an American thing or what's up, but like one, you can't expect to be like at peak happiness every day. Like you just can't expect that. And you want to, and again, you definitely do want to have more happy days than sad days. But my biggest issue is like people will say I'm not happy, but then when you ask them, so what will make you happy? They're often like, I don't know. And like, it's a weird thing to wrap my head around, because if you have a partner, you should want to make it work. So if they come to you one day like, oh, I'm not happy, I would respond, so what would make you happy? And then we would try to like work on fixing that. But this is where it gets weird, because Jonathan acted like he had no idea that his wife was unhappy, and then she just shocked him one day and said she was unhappy. So it's kind of like, as a partner, like, how do you deal with that? And then when it comes to Guy, his divorce sounded very mutual, and now that he has this new lease on life, he's happier. But what specifically about not being with your wife made you happier? Was it just now you get to date again and you feel more vitality by having people like you? Like what specifically? And ultimately, this is just like a deeper question that I just don't know, but I do think happiness is like your own responsibility. And like to expect a partner to make you happy is like kind of unrealistic. Like you have to go out and find the things you do enjoy, which that seems like what Guy is doing. But also I think you need to find things that make you happy outside of dating too. Like it's nice to do things with a partner, but also you got to find things that make you happy. And I think to put that on a partner is like a little ridiculous, but I don't know. I'm just like kind of rolling with the thoughts here for you too. Next, the other thing I want to say about Guy is that in the US, it is very common for couples to become empty nesters or to retire and then get a divorce. That is something that's very common, because now that a couple doesn't have kids to look after and now that they're retired, there's no distractions, and then they often realize that they don't even like each other that much. And this could very much be the case for Guy. Again, when you're empty nesters, you find that you have way more time on your hands and you are supposed to be spending that time with your partner. And the same goes with retiring. You go from working every day to now not having to work every day. So you find yourself with a lot more time and you're more likely going to spend it with your partner. And a lot of people realize like, wow, I don't really like this partner. So they end up getting divorced. And that is like a real thing. Anyways, I really like Guy and I think he would be a great pick for Joan. I hope he's in the top 4, but I don't know if he'll make the top 4. We'll just have to wait and see. And sorry, just one more thing I want to say about Guy. Guy is like an old nerd. So from like when I was like 17, 18 to like 26, I had an old doctor. Like he was easily in his like 60s, and like he was old and like really adorable, but he was like so smart and like such a nerd, and that very much reminds me of what Guy is. Guy has these moments where I'm just like, wow, you are really nerdy. But again, most doctors, they're scientists, they're kind of nerdy. After that, we move on to the cocktail party. And yep, it's that time, outfit of the episode. For this week's outfit of the episode, I'm giving it to Joan during the cocktail party. Joan is serving us this really pretty, flowy, sleeveless white gown. This dress is just so pretty and it works so well for her. What I love about styling this season is very much that like Joan and her stylist are doing a good job in the sense of like she looks gorgeous, and also most of her outfits are like a little sexy, but she's not doing too much, and her clothing is still age appropriate. And I may get some flack for saying age appropriate because you should be able to wear any clothes at any age, yada yada yada, but I kind of disagree with that. Joan does not need to be on this show in tube tops and mini skirts and a ton of Gen Z attire. Like, she doesn't need to do that. Like, I would rather her wear more age appropriate clothing, and she does that, but also her clothing is like very edgy and very stylish. It doesn't say grandma at all, and I do think her and her stylist have done like a really good job at doing like age appropriate clothing, but also it's like still sexy. And sorry, another sidebar about Joan. Joan this episode, and kind of last episode too, she's been a little too hosty for me. Joan almost seems like she's trying to be Jesse Palmer. Like, she's playing the role of host, and like, yes, you have to do a little bit of that on this show, but to me, you're supposed to be connecting more with the guys, and like, because she's like being a host, it almost feels like a disconnect with the guys. Like, I really need her to connect with the guys more, or maybe it's just not showing up on camera. I don't know. Let me know what y'all think in the comments about that. Like, especially during the group date earlier in this episode, it felt like she was hosting the group date. It didn't feel like she was like on a date with these guys. Okay, so during the cocktail party, just a few one-on-ones I want to talk about. So Joan has a one-on-one with Pascal, and she felt like Pascal was being a bit indifferent towards her. And Pascal explains that he wants more time and needs more time to open up, and he apologizes if it came off as indifferent. And I think he says because he's French, he can come off that way. But this whole part was like kind of confusing because like, didn't y'all just have a one-on-one? Also, oftentimes French people do come off as like a little indifferent. Like, I'm pretty sure it's just a cultural difference. Next, Joan has a one-on-one with Jonathan, and he pulls out a Cheerios box with her name on it, and they have a bowl of Cheerios together. This was cute, but I thought the sponsor was Quaker Oats. Oh, and sidebar, I love Pascal's tie, and Jonathan looked really good. He was wearing like a black blazer with a black turtleneck, and that was a really good look for him. Anyways, y'all may have not caught this, but Jonathan and Joan were talking about their like typical days and typical schedules, and they both wake up at like 5 a.m. and they'll like have coffee, meditate, maybe exercise, get ready, start their day, etc. And overall, their schedules were really similar, and that is like a huge bonus that I think is often overlooked. This is just my opinion. This is something that's like so underestimated, but like having a similar schedule is like so good when searching for a partner. Like, if you're a morning person and your partner is a night person, like, that's probably not a good idea to date someone because y'all gonna be on completely different schedules when y'all gonna hang out. And like, overall, I feel like this aspect of dating is just so underestimated. Next, Mark got her a fire truck, and I thought that was really lame. And then after that, she has a one-on-one with Keith, and the one-on-one just didn't go well. Keith overall just sounded desperate, and I like Keith, but this was just not his best day. Like, his game was off. We all have off days, and I think that's just what was happening to Keith. It like happens to the best of us, but he ends up getting a rose and staying another week. Next, let's talk about Chock. So earlier in the episode, Joan is preparing for her date with Jordan, and we find out that Chock's mother has passed and he's got to leave the show. So this was not unexpected. Chock's mother was in her 90s, and also I think she's had cancer like 4 times or something like that. So this was not unexpected. But Chock in a confessional does say, I knew it was coming, but it doesn't make it any easier. And like, that is like the realest statement, one of the realest statements I've ever heard on the show. Cause like, even though, you know, like, cause like, even though as humans, you know, we're not immortal, like, it doesn't make someone dying any easier. So Chock has a one-on-one with Joan and tells her his mother passed, he needs to leave the show, yada yada yada. And Chock explains that it's really hard for him to leave because during the group's striptease date, and then after when they had the one-on-one, when Joan gave him that validation. It was like one of the best nights of his life. And I thought that was kind of wild that that was better than the Disney date, but whatever. And also Chock does mention that his stepdad is still around because, so I thought he was like basically the only caregiver for his mother, but no, his stepdad is still around. So that is like such a blessing. So later on during the cocktail party, Chock shows up and he has returned from going back home to help with his mother's passing. And if y'all didn't know, each episode is like a week. So it is possible for him to leave the show and come back. It is a very short turnaround time, but it is possible. And this is a very unique situation. So I thought it was reasonable for him to like go home and come back in such a short amount of time, because if he's truly interested in Joan, that does make sense. But it is a very quick turnaround time. But also I think he's from the Midwest. So getting from LA to the Midwest isn't as bad. Like, it's not like he had to go to the East Coast or anything. And y'all, this moment was just so glamorous. And I'm pretty sure Chock is gonna make it to top 3. Just to have your mother pass and you leave the show unexpectedly, but come back because you want to be with Joan so bad. Like, that is such a good storyline. And Joan keeps saying she likes him. Again, I'm not seeing the connection personally, but she says she likes him. So I'm pretty sure he secured a slot in top 3 and he's gonna make it pretty far. And then also during the one-on-one, Chock asks Joan about her ring. She wears her wedding ring on a separate hand and explains like that was the ring from her previous marriage and she felt guilty wearing it, but she didn't want to put all the contestants through that. So she still wears it, but she put it on another hand. And again, I thought that was very reasonable. So I'm so glad Joan switched hand for the ring. Also, if she wanted to turn the ring into like a necklace or a bracelet, I'd be cool with that too, because clearly this is your previous husband and he meant a lot to you. But if I was a contestant, if she was still wearing her wedding ring, to me, I would think like she's not ready. And then also like the show's supposed to end in an engagement, so that ring hand needs to be free, you know. So I'm glad she did remove it. And like this is like such a tough conversation too. Like it's so wild like thinking about having to do all of that. And lastly, Chock talks to her about keeping an armor up and like letting down his walls, yada yada yada. This was a very generic conversation and it's definitely a conversation we hear all the time on this show. And like I'm pretty sure Chock is gonna make top 3, but I think she would be better off choosing Keith or Guy at this point, because a lot of things Chock says and does just seem so generic. Like nothing really seems specific to Joan. And also I see more of a long-term relationship with Guy or Keith than I do with Chock. After that, we move on to the rose ceremony and Gary, Charles, Elle, Gil, and Dan all get sent home. And I didn't think any of those eliminations were shocking. It was very clear to me she was not going to pick Gary or Charles L. Dan may have been an upset for some of you. So a lot of people were like rooting for Dan. I wasn't seeing it, but a lot of people were rooting for him. But the only upset that I will say is like Dan, Charles L, and Gary in general were just more fun to watch on TV. Like they just make good reality TV and we're going to kind of lose that. Like the guys were getting to the top overall are kind of boring in terms of reality TV, but I don't know, maybe they'll turn it up a notch and bring on the romance or the drama or something. Oh, and lastly to wrap up, I think Charles L was having like an exit interview and then Mark showed up to like give him a hug or something and Charles L was like, Mark, and the moment was just like so adorable. And then I think Guy went to say bye to one of the other contestants too, and it was definitely a very heartfelt brotherhood moment. And like because ABC more focuses on like the drama and stuff now, we don't get as many of these like brotherhood, sisterhood, heartfelt moments, but when we do get them, they just make you feel so good. And also this one was just so organic, like it wasn't like forced. And like sometimes on the show, definitely on The Bachelor with the women, sometimes the moments just feel so forced, but this one was just truly organic, so it made me love it more. And that is the end of the episode and the end of this review. If you enjoyed this review, please go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one. Bye.